Hi, Blues Matters here. We have the one and only Duke Robillard. Hello there, Duke. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Where are you today?
I'm at home in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, USA.
Great. Right, let's take you way back in your career. What made you want to become a musician in the first place? What's the backstory to Duke Robillard?
The backstory. Well, yeah, I've been around a long time, so
Yeah.
it's a long backstory. I started when I decided I was going to be a guitar player when I was 6 years old. I just got really turned on by Chuck Berry and Fats Domino, Little Richard, all those guys. My brother had all of the records. He was 10 years older than me, and he had all the 45s at the very beginning of rock and roll, of all the great stuff. And that just did it for me. And then for the blues, the first blues I heard was The Flip Side of Maybelline, which was in the Wee Wee Hours by Chuck Berry. I was just 7, but it just grabbed me. I just started looking for more music like it, and it's been a eternal quest ever since then.
And the guitar, where did you start learning the guitar?
Well, my brothers both had guitars, but I wasn't allowed to play theirs. I was just a kid, and I was so serious, and so I was consumed by rock and roll and electric guitar at an early age. My mother said, there's no way my son is doing that. She saw Little Richard and Elvis, Fats Domino, and Chuck Berry, and all those people on TV. And she said, no, you're not doing that. So I had to build a guitar with my father for a science project to enter in the science fair. And that's how I got my first guitar. And then he couldn't take it away from me because I won second prize in the science fair with it. So that was my start.
What about that guitar? Have you still got it?
No, actually, when I finally convinced my father to buy me a real guitar, I threw it away. I threw it in the dump because I was so embarrassed to have to play it. And now, of course, I wish I had it. It would be a prized possession now. But at the time, it was an embarrassment.
And what sort of music was getting played around the house when you were young?
Hank Williams, and then all the early rock and roll people. That was mostly it. My sister, who was probably 11 or 12 years older than me, I was a Glenn Miller fan, so I heard that kind of music around the house. But my parents weren't really musical, but my mother just didn't want me playing an electric guitar. My father didn't mind. In fact, he supported me later on after I got in a band.
When was your first break in a band, and when were you first on stage?
I was about 13, I think, 12 or 13 when I first joined a band and started playing on stage.
And what did it feel like being on stage the first time?
I'll tell you the truth, I didn't even acknowledge that I was in front of a crowd because I was so nervous and I was so worried about making a mistake when I was, very beginning. That all I was concentrating on was making it through the song, each song without making mistakes.
Can you remember the songs you played?
Oh, I think Ray's Rumble and Rawhide, Chuck Berry songs, Insur's songs, mostly instrumentals, mostly guitar instrumentals of the day, the late 50s, early 60s.
And with the guitar, are you self-taught then?
Yeah, I was self-taught, yes. I watched my brother play when he would jam with his friends. They were all, teenagers, and I was, just 7 at the time, 7 or 8 or 9. And so when he would have a jam session with his friends, I would watch their fingers, and that's how I just learned the chord shapes. Then I just taught myself.
And your first band?
My first band was a trio, 2 guitars and drums. We were called the Wildcats.
Right. And how long did that last?
I don't know, maybe a year or 2. I don't remember in terms of time very well how long each thing was,
And how did the Roomful of Blues come around?
Well, I started Roomful of Blues right after I got out of high school. I was playing at that time in my high school bands. I was playing a lot of blues songs, and I had heard a lot of them I learned from people like the Animals and the Rolling Stones because it was before I knew about the originators of the blues and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all of that. By the time I graduated from high school, was heavily into the blues and people like Memphis Slim and uh, Elmore James and, all the guys out of Chicago especially, and then B.B. King. The year after I got out of high school, I started the first version of Roomful of Blues, which was without horns. We had a harmonica player, and so we played mostly Chicago blues. And then I started collecting 78s and learning about the R&B styles of the late 40s, early 50s. And that's when we added the horns and, started from there. And that was about 1971, maybe even 69. We had maybe two horns at some point in 69.
And did you tour locally then?
We would just play in Rhode Island and nearby Connecticut and Massachusetts. We started, and then, it just went on and on. We'd just kind of go state by state until probably by 1972 or 3, we were traveling up to Toronto. We're going up to Rochester and Buffalo, and then on to Toronto, and then we started traveling south down as far as Washington, D.C. And then by the time we had our first album out, then we made it to the New Orleans Jazz Festival. And that was in 1977 or 78 that we played 78 we played the Jazz Festival. And by that time we started going over to Texas, and we befriended the fabulous Thunderbirds, who we met in Boston when they first came up north.
Was that the largest crowd that you'd played to?
Yes, and we met a lot of people there, and the Thunderbirds were also playing there the same year. So we got to hear, I get to hear a lot of amazing people like Lightnin' Hopkins and all kinds of amazing artists. But I also got a start listening to live blues at the Newport Folk Festival in 67, I think was the first year I went. And that was, that really opened my eyes. And I decided that was definitely what I was going to be doing with my life by the time I heard Muddy Waters live and Wolf and Buddy Guy and all those people.
Yeah, and what particular style did you like at that time? What did you base your music on?
At that time, it was the Chicago blues people, like that people I mentioned, like, B.B. King and Memphis Slim, Matt Guitar Murphy with Memphis Slim, Buddy Guy, all the chess people, the chess guitarist, Luther Tucker and Robert Jr. Lockwood, all the greats that were making the records, playing behind all the Chicago singers and harp players.
And did you meet many of them? Did you meet
Yes. Well, but I was a real shy kid. There were very few that I got to meet until I was a little bit older in Roomful for a few years. Dick Waterman, who was managing us at the time, and he managed Bonnie Raitt also at the same time, introduced me to Muddy Waters and convinced Muddy to have me sit in. And once I sat in with Muddy, he called me. He was in town for a week in Boston, and I went back every night, and he got me on stage with him every night that week. So, and then we started playing and backing up people like Big Joe Turner, Eddie Cleanhead Vincent, all of that. And, so I became friends with all those people. And Big Joe Turner, he had told me that he was going to take a tape of me back to T-Bone Walker's wife and tell her that, see, T-Bone's not dead. He's there's a guy here that plays just like him. And I ended up being friends with T-Bone's daughter, Bernita, and Pee Wee Creighton's wife, and they would come out to see me when I played festivals out in California.
And how did that, learning from the masters, I mean, that must have been something. How did you feel when you were playing with Muddy Waters?
Well, with Muddy, The thing about Muddy was when he had me sit in the very first night I played with him, and I was just sitting in, but he told me after the show, he said, Duke, I don't know who you are, but if I had you and Fats, meaning Hollywood Fats, who was his guitarist at the time, if I had you and Fats in my band, I could rule the world, he said. And so I should have talked to him about joining his band, but I was leading Roomful, and I just couldn't leave my own band at that time. But I certainly gave it serious thought.
And after Roomful of Blues, you went on to...
Well, I went to my own band after Roomful. When I left Roomful, I went down to a small band, a trio or a quartet, and I put my guitar playing in front more. With Roomful, it was the whole bigger band sound that I was interested in playing that style of guitar, which features guitar, but not all of the time. It just seemed like the way to go is to kind of push my guitar playing at that point, which was good for my career. But I still love the old style, and I still love horns, and especially saxophones with the band.
And then your time with Fabulous Thunderbirds, how did that come about?
Yes. Well, we met the Thunderbirds in the early 70s when they came up to Boston to play. I heard about them and went up to see them from where I lived in Rhode Island. That's right, they came to see me first. The night before they played in Boston, I was in Boston with Roomful, and they came to see us, and they couldn't believe what they heard. And they couldn't believe somebody was doing that era music and doing it correctly. So we talked to them on our break, and they were in Boston the next night. So some of us went up to see them the following night, and we just became really good friends right from there and admirers of each other. And we sat in with each other a lot. We did a lot of double bills with Roomful and the Thunderbirds. So when Jimmy decided to leave, he just said to the band, call Duke. It was as simple as that. They decided that I was a good fit for the band.
And how did that make you feel joining the Fab Teeth?
Well, it was great because they were friends. Both, we played different styles in the bands we were in, but we both loved all of those blues styles. And so I was a big fan of Jimmy and the band, and they were fans of ours. So it was a very easy thing to do. I mean, it was a natural fit. And plus, by that time, Preston Hubbard, who was Roomful's bass player earlier, was in the Thunderbirds, and Fran Christina, who was my first drummer in Roomful of Blues when I started the band, was their drummer. So, it was having old friends and old bandmates that I was used to playing with. So it was great. It was very comfortable.
So it was a natural progression, was it, do you think, the collaboration?
Yes. It was a very natural progression.
What kind of style of blues were you playing at that time?
Well, myself, when I joined the band, I had a trio at that point, and I was kind of following in a similar role in the sense of many bands at that time, writing my own songs and playing traditional blues, but giving it a little more modern approach and letting a little bit of influence of early rock and roll, which was the way things were then in the 80s, when Robert Cray was getting popular and Stevie Vaughan and just so many artists, it was kind of a new trend, and a kind of a new sound, taking blues and adding in, some of the Texas elements and some rock and roll. And it was a really invigorating period. There were a lot of bands playing similarly related music. It was a good time. That was a very good time.
And did you ever meet Stevie Ray Vaughan himself?
Oh, yeah. I met him the first time we went, before he ever really toured at all. That same tour where we did our first time at the New Orleans Jazz Festival, we went over to Austin, Texas, after that, we did, I think we did a double bill maybe with the Thunderbirds. And Stevie came out and he sat in with us, and that's when I met him that night. So that was 1978.
Mm.
About 5 years before his first record came out. And then he started coming up north because they all loved the audiences because we kind of prepped them, roomful, and there became a lot of blues bands in the New England area. So Stevie came up and we would sit in with each other, and I got to know him quite well and played with him. His first time he played a big show at a college up in Rhode Island, I opened for him, and then I sat in with him after that, after in the middle of his set. So we all got to know each other quite well.
And what was the blues scene like in your area then?
In New England?
Yeah, in New England. Yeah,
Yeah, it was really good. There were blues clubs everywhere. Like Boston had
yeah.
probably at least a half a dozen blues clubs. Rhode Island had 3 or 4, maybe 5 blues clubs. Connecticut, New York, they hired a lot of blues bands in New York at places like the Lone Star Cafe and the Bottom Line. There were just blues clubs were everywhere, and so we were all working 5, 6, 7 days a week, which is
And now,
nothing like that anymore.
yeah, I was going to say, there's how many now? How many clubs are around Rhode Island now?
Well, that you would play blues in Rhode Island, I can think of 1, maybe 2.
Right.
Yeah, probably 2.
And you played with so many artists. What about your singing? Where does that come from? Vocals? What kind of heroes have you got there?
Well, when I first started singing a lot in Roomful, because we had a singer before, and then when we added the horns, I kind of took over most of the singing. Greg Piccolo also did some of it, but I discovered that I was never going to sound like Muddy Waters or somebody like that. So I kind of really enjoyed the singing of like Louis Jordan and Buddy Johnson and the R&B singers, Joe Turner. So I kind of gravitated to try to sing in those styles, and that suited me at that time. I was able to pull that off with the horn band, the first version of Roomful. So that does T-Bone Walker. He was a big influence on me. I think he's a very kind of underrated vocalist because his guitar playing is so important that people tend to not talk about how great a vocalist he was, but he was an incredible vocalist.
And then moving on, you got the nod from Mr. Bob Dylan. What happened there? How did you get involved with that?
Well, it's really funny, but for about, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, I kept getting invitations to come down and audition with Bob for his band, but I wasn't interested in doing that because I was a band leader and I was very happy being a band leader. And, I got about 4 different times I was asked to audition, but then I was hired one time in the 90s to record on his Time Out of Mind album, the album that was kind of his big comeback album. And so I went down there and played with him, with the band on that recording. And they still kept asking me every couple of years if I would come and audition for the band, for the live band. And finally, one year when things were a little bit slow, I decided, well, maybe I'll try it. How many times can you be asked to audition for Bob Dylan and turn it down, So I did audition and went on the road with the band. And I didn't stay all that long because we had a really good tour. And then we had a break, and when we went back, he was a completely different person, and we didn't get along right from the start of the second part of the touring for the year. So, I just decided I'm going to go back to my own thing because it was more comfortable for me.
When you were playing on the set, did you have chord sheets and things like that?
I made my own.
Yeah.
We'd go over Tony Garnier, the bass player, who's the musical director. He and the other guitar player in the band at the time, Stu, what's his last name? I'm just drawing a blank at the second, but we had a little session with the three of us would get together and they'd show me the tunes, and then I'd just listen to the records and make my own charts, my own notes. But I'm not a reader, so I just make very simple notes, and the rest I just learn by ear.
You've collaborated with a lot of people. Are there any collaborations that you were surprised about?
What?
That you were surprised to get the nod for?
Oh, yes. Well, most of them. The biggest one probably would be Jay McShann, being, the Kansas City jazz and blues pianist that he was. I was asked to produce him and also was the guitar player. We ended up doing 3 records together. I just worshiped him. He was a wonderful person and very important musician and a bridge between the musics that I love. The swing jazz and Kansas City jazz and the blues. And then I got to work with, so many of them that Jimmy Witherspoon, that's one that I didn't think I'd ever get a chance to work with him. And that was a relationship we had musically working with him. And then Billy Boy Arnold is another one. There's so many of them. Yeah, it's hard to just remember them all off the tip of my hat, But Herb Ellis, the jazz guitarist Herb Ellis, that was something I initiated because I wanted to do an album with a bunch of different guitarists that I loved, like Les Paul and Kenny Burrell, and just do a song or two with each artist of my idols. And I couldn't get past their managers. But Herb Ellis, the guy that was managing him, thought he knew my work and he thought it would be a great combination. And it did turn out to be a great combination. We were going to record a couple songs, and we recorded 2 whole albums in 2 days.
Wow.
So it went so smooth, and it was really fun.
One of my favorite albums of yours is with Ronnie Earl.
Oh, yes.
And
a lot of people love that one.
Any stories about Ronnie? How that came about? How did that album?
Oh, well, Ronnie and I, Ronnie came in after me and Roomful. And so Ronnie used to come in and sit in with Roomful all the time. So it was just like me joining the Thunderbirds. It was a very natural thing for him to join Roomful because he sat in with us often. We were friends and we played together quite often. So that was just the same type of situation. Like it was obvious that he would be the right guy for the band. And so that's how we got to make the album together, and I'm glad we did. It was a good experience, and it was very natural for us to play together like that.
And have you any stories from the roads that you can tell us? You must have.
And what's that?
You must have hundreds of stories from live performances that you can.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Ronnie and I really played quite a bit. When I was in Roomful, he would sit in with us all the time. And then once he had his own band, we'd also sit in with each other's bands and sometimes play together, the bands play together. There's so many artists that I've played with. I mean, I was really lucky that most of my idols were still alive when I was out there working. So I got to play with a lot of them, meet them, or play with them and tour with them to some extent.
And did you tour with Johnny Adams at all?
I did shows with Johnny Adams, but we never really did a tour. But I played some festivals where my band backed him up, and at the Blues Awards one year, we backed him up. I got to record, I think, 3 albums, with him. And those are among the album of Doc Pomus songs. Johnny Adams sings Doc Pomus, The Real Me. That album, that's probably my favorite thing that I've ever been part of. It was just such a beautiful band, great music, and, honoring Doc Pomus, who was a close friend of mine. And playing with Johnny, just didn't get any better than that for me.
And Tom Waits as well.
I love Tom Waits. He's just So everything he does, just about everything he does, is he's got a blues tinge to it, even if it's not blues. And blues is a big part of his sound and his personality. So it was really fun to play with him. Really an honor.
We'll take you to the new album then. Aha. This is your 38th one or something like that, we've read.
38. Yeah, it's number
Good grief.
38.
Yeah. Let's talk about this one. Nola Records, Nola Blue Records. What
Yes.
was the process? What was the process of the production of the album?
Well, we wanted to make I wanted to make an album because I'm getting a bit old. I'm 77 now, and and I'm having a little trouble with my hands because I have some issues of neuropathy and arthritis and rotator cuff problems.
Right.
So I wanted to make an album that, in case this happened to be my last record, that would encompass all the different things that I like and play. So it covers blues, R&B, swing era kind of jazz, New Orleans kind of sounds, and, late 40s, early 50s rhythm and blues, just straight old-time blues. It just covers all the areas that I love the most.
Talk about some of the songs.
Okay.
Okay. You've got three songs you wrote.
Okay. Well, one of them called Feel My Cares,
Yes.
which is those three words are a line in a Robert Johnson song that when I was like 16 and I discovered Robert Johnson, I was very, very moved by his music and his songs, like just about everybody that hears Robert Johnson. And Feel My Cares was a line in one of his songs, and I took that as a theme and made my own song out of those three words when I was 17 years old. And it never got recorded in all this time, but it was a good song. And so we recorded it kind of off the cuff, quickly made up an arrangement and did it in the studio, and it really turned out great. And I'm so glad I did it because it's one of the songs. I wrote a lot of songs when I was young. I wrote quite a lot long before I made records. So I'm glad now that some of them are coming to light, And there's another tune called Blast Off, which is the name of the album. And we were waiting for some of the rest of the guys to show up in the studio, and me and the drummer and bass player were, we were just getting our sounds, and we were just jamming around. And so we thought we'd try to come up with something, an idea for a new song. And my bass player had a good riff and my drummer had a good groove. So we laid down a rhythm track, and then I took the track home and I listened to it and kind of made up a song around the rhythm track, and it turned out to be the title tune of the album, Blast Off.
Yeah. And Galactic Grease.
Galactic Grease. Well, that's another thing. When we were in the studio early with the rhythm section, and we were jamming around, and I wanted to do something in a style of kind of a little bit of guitar style of Steve Cropper, because two of the earliest guys that really influenced me were Steve Cropper and, oh God, what's his name now? I'm getting forgetful in my old age.
Oh, yeah.
The guitarist there that was with Ricky Nelson and Elvis Presley. I can't think what his name is right now. But anyway, I'm sure everybody knows who I'm talking about because he was, Ozzy and Harriet's TV show every week. We're playing with Ricky. Anyway, forgive me for not remembering. But anyway, those guys were very influential to me in the beginning of my career. And so I wanted to do a song kind of in a Telecaster player style. So I kind of devised this tune that was simple and kind of a little tribute to Steve Cropper in a way. So that's where the Galactic Grease tune came from.
When you're writing a song, is it the guitar lick first or the lyric?
It can be either one. If I have a theme, then it's going to be the lyrics are going to develop with the music. But sometimes I'll have a groove or a line that I play that that I'll build a song around. So it can start either way. It doesn't have to be, one or the other particularly. It's just whatever pops into my head.
So When I Got Lucky.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's a great tune by Floyd Dixon, who is, the wonderful pianist, the Texas blues pianist and singer. I've got to play with him a few times when he was around, and I really always loved his style and his sound. That's a tune that I don't think people have covered too much, and I thought it's a good song in the style of music that I really love, that R&B style. So we thought that would be a good one to cover. And my singer now, I don't do very much singing. I have a singer, Chris Cody, who's just got a fabulous voice, and it's a real natural thing for him to sing all these styles. So he sings it, and it was very natural for him. A lot of these tunes we learned in the studio, just listening to a recording of it and saying, okay, write down the lyrics, here we go, which I like. I don't like to know anything too well when I'm recording. I like the spirit of just catching it when it's fresh. Right. I think that's blues music anyway, because it's not music that you're aiming at some kind of perfection. You're aiming at a feeling more than anything else,
I'll Be Glad When You're Dead. How did you choose that one?
Well, Louis Armstrong has always been one of my favorites, and I always proclaim that Louis was one of the first great blues players. Jazz and blues were closely related from the beginning of jazz and until modern jazz became the norm and less connected to the blues. So Louis Armstrong's solos on blues were just the most beautiful things. So I've been a fan of all Lewis's music from a young age, and I always loved I'll Be Glad When You're Dead, You Rascal You, because it's just a really fun song, And so Chris Cody and I did it as a duet. We sing back and forth, kind of, threatening each other, basically, And it's just a real fun song, and it swings and gives the guys in the band a great chance to really play in that style, which they're all really good at.
Have you played that one live?
Not yet, but we will.
Yeah, a good one live. Warm and Tender Love. What made you choose that one?
Well, that's a song that I had never heard. And of course, I love Percy's singing, but when Chris Cody brought me that song, I hadn't heard it before. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, well, it's a great song for him to sing. And it's also, in a more of a soul vein than I usually play. And of course, I've always really liked soul music, but because I was a singer in my band and didn't feel I could pull off soul vocals, I really didn't do soul music until I got Chris in my band, where he's a natural singing. And so now I get to add that kind of playing into my music because I have a vocalist who can do it and is so familiar with it.
Certainly his vocal range sounds really something.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. And you cover one of Tom Waits' songs, Low Down.
Yes, Low Down.
Yeah.
That's going to be our first single from the album, actually. And, a friend of mine sent me that song. Now, I had the album. It's on a 3 or 4 CD set.
Yeah.
Often Brawlers and Ballers, I think it's called. And it's not a song I ever paid attention to, but someone sent it to me, just that one song. So when I listened to it, I went, wow, this is a really cool old rock and roll song, and it's great Tom Waits lyrics, and I think it would be perfect for us. And, believe it or not, we just went in again, just Chris wrote down the lyrics quick, and we just played it without really, we rehearsed it once, and we put it down on tape, and the first take, that was it.
Right.
It just really, I just don't think we could improve on it. I mean, we could probably play it more perfect, but you don't want perfect when you're playing that kind of music. It's got to be fresh, and it's got to rock, and it's just got to have that feeling of spontaneity, which it certainly had because we had only played it once one other time, so.
You must have great confidence in your band.
Oh, I have incredible confidence in my band. That I've got people that a lot of them have been working with me for like 20 years or more. So or maybe started with me 20 or more years ago and then came back in the band and so they're all schooled in many different styles of music and they're session people for many different types of acts and as studio musicians, but also they do gigs with other people in many different styles. So they're just really adept at many styles, but are great blues players and love the music, so.
And for you, what does blues mean, person?
Well, I'll try to explain it, what I think about it. Blues, when I first heard that Chuck Berry song in the wee wee hours, I was, 7 or 8 years old, and it just grabbed me, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was blues, because it was the flip side of a rock and roll record. But I started learning early that I identified something similar in between, even some big band music, because there are many big band tunes and boogie woogie tunes that are blues. I first of all, I thought of blues as being a sound, a chord progression, a sound that creates a feeling, whether it's a happy, dancing kind of feeling or a sad, lonely sound. I came to realize that the chord progression and the way that is played, it's how many different ways you can play that simple thing and make it some kind of great feeling, a feeling of joy, feeling of sadness, a feeling of inspiration, feeling of despair. It's just amazing what the sound of the blues can do. It really is the root of country music. It's the root of R&B, soul music, even contemporary music like rap. Even some of it is related to that in some ways. Certainly jazz and blues were very close in the very beginning of them. And I like to go all the way back to whatever music I'm listening to. I like to find about the people who invented the styles and really check them out. And I find there's a close connection between all those styles of music that are American music. And if you go back, you'll see how true that is. Hank Williams, Jimmy Rogers, as well as people like Robert Johnson and Blind Blake and people like Son House. People make a big different thing about the white and the black, the white music and the black music. But, Jimmy Rogers had blues that were really real blues. And he obviously learned it from the black people near him in the South. And I don't know, it's all connected. It's all human. But obviously it really works because people all over the planet are so taken by the blues, and so many young people learn about it and find out about it, that it's the fact that it's still going and there's still new people coming up that learn the traditional styles and can play it well. It says an awful lot, that music started in the, early teens and now it's still at this time still going.
And what's the best advice you've had in your career?
Well, I always like to say to musicians or people that want to be musicians, study what you love, find out about its roots, go back to the roots and things that relate to it and learn it inside out, what it really comes from. And if you're going to be a musician, do it because you love the music, not because you think that you're going to make a lot of money doing it. People do make a lot of money in the business, but not very many compared to how many there are that are going to make a living playing music. And you have to do it because you love it. Because if you do it because you love it, there's no way that you're going to be disappointed. It's disappointing when you do something, go into it and think, I'm going to end up making a lot of money doing this. And you don't, then you spend a lot of time doing something and you're not happy. You got to be happy. And I think doing music, you got to do it because you love the music. And that's the only reason. And if you get really successful doing it, that's that's just an extra bonus, you know. That's my view of it.
Yeah. And to yourself, what does success mean?
Success means for me, it means I've been able to make a living, just like I'm saying, doing what I love and not having to do something that I don't love just to get by and to, have a home and be able to put food on the table. I've been able to hone my skills and do it over uh, 60 years, and I'm still doing it, you know.
What does keep you motivated?
Just music, just hearing new people and hearing new musicians that have they're inspired to learn to play traditionally first, and then if they grow into something else that's different, that's great. But I really respect the people that start out by wanting to learn to play the music the way it was created, the traditional way, and then taking it from there. People that say, oh, I'm just completely original. I don't have any influences. That's bullshit because you're influenced by everything you hear. And I actually try to not listen to too much that I don't want to be influenced by. I try not to even hear it because I, just want good things to seep into my brain. There's enough stuff in society that's bad that, you try to avoid. I don't need it in my music because I love music.
And going back to the album, what are your hopes and fears of the album?
Of my new album? Well, every time I put out a new album, I think, well, maybe something is going to click. I mean, I have a wide audience, but it's not a mainstream audience. So every time I have a new recording, I have to think maybe something will click and maybe somehow something will actually get more attention this time and bring more people out to hear us. Sometimes it happens a little bit. All you can do is do your best and hope and hope. So every new recording is a chance for more people to find out about my music. I can't complain, and I don't know how many more years I'm going to be able to do it. It's hard to say, But I'm thankful that I've gotten this far and I've been able to sustain a living doing what I love. Because that's the greatest thing that you could achieve is doing what you love for a living.
And are you taking it out on the road? Are you going on tour with it?
We have to decide that as, we're checking into that now. We have to see how many festivals we can get that will connect dates to actually be able to do a tour. Who knows? It's been very hard in the last 10 or 15 years to tour, because many places don't have music during the week or they don't pay enough to make it. Now hotels are always expensive. They used to be cheap hotels. There are no such things as cheap hotels anymore. So, the whole cost of just going on the road and touring, you have to be on a fairly high level to pull that off, or you have to be young and willing to sleep on floors and stuff like that to do it, which I did when I was young, but at my age, I'm not going to be doing that anymore.
And there's so many ways to listen to music now compared to when you first released your first album. Looking back, what are your proudest moments?
Proudest moments?
Yeah.
Well, being able to play and record and produce and back up, my idols, Joe Turner, Cleanhead Vincent, Jay McShann, Billy Boy Arnold, Jimmy Witherspoon, and play with Tom Waits and Bob Dylan. I mean, those are all really special things to me. And, there's nothing but of course, just playing my own gigs with my own band and having people appreciate it out on the road. And, we will be going out to promote this album, but it might be more like fly-in dates, fly into a city to do a night or two and then go back home and then go back out, because the constant touring and having too many days off during the week, it makes it impossible for me at this point. I'm I'm pretty proud of what I've been able to accomplish. I don't think about it often until people ask me about it. And then it gets me thinking, yeah, I have been lucky. I have done an awful lot. You usually think forward, what else can I do? What have I got to accomplish before I'm finished, But when I look back and I do an interview and people talk like this, it makes me realize, yeah, I've done quite a bit of work,
Yeah. And have you finished your autobiography? Are you still writing it?
I have started it, and I've had a lot of trouble finding time, or it's not an easy thing. I mean, some people seem to be able to just do, whip it out, but I'm not good at taking notes, so I get all these ideas, and if I don't write them down, I forget them. So I'm actually meeting right after I talk to you, having a phone conversation with a writer who might possibly help me finish my book. And I hope that works out because it'll be much easier. I need somebody kind of prodding me along to make notes and remember things but I got a good 100 pages down into it already. So that's a good start. In a lot of my early career, just the beginnings of my life period, that was kind of easy, and I wanted to get that down. I've at least got that far, up through the first 10 years of my career.
Is there anything you want to tell the Blues Matters reading public?
Well, I would just encourage them to check out Blast Off, our album that's coming out in February. I think it's one of the best things I've done. I think my production, my band, the quality of the material, the quality of the sound, everything came together for this record. Even the vinyl pressing. I just got what they call a test pressing. I just got that, and it sounds unbelievable. I'm really, really happy about it. So, whatever you hear it on, whether it's digital, Spotify, or whatever, or you listen to a CD or you hear the vinyl, it sounds great in all of the, I guess that's one thing that's happening is with all the technology is that they're improving all the different ways of doing things. There are people that can still make it sound great, like the best hi-fi of the late 60s or 70s. So, I think everything has come together in a really good way for this album. The band is smoking. My vocalist, Chris, he's incredible on this record. I'm really happy with my own playing. Everything sounds great, So I just urge people to buy the CD or record or listen to it however they listen to that music. I think they'll be pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. And what about the future? Any more collaborations, projects?
I don't have anything lined up at the moment, but I'm certainly open to it. I may be looking at, I'm doing a few less things now as I get older because I want to spend a little more time relaxing and hanging out with my wife and dog. But, I'm open to projects and to playing on people's records and producing artists. Certainly open to that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Chick. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much, Colin. I've enjoyed talking to you.